Working for free as a filmmaker is probably one of the most hotly debated topics out there. Is it exploitation? Is it going to make or break your career? Should you do it? Shouldn't you do it? Some people think you have to do it. Some people think you should never do it at all. And I've done a load of unpaid projects at various different points in my career, some of which have completely changed the trajectory of my career, some of which have burnt me out and almost destroyed me. So in this video, I want to talk to you about 4 situations where you might consider working for free and it might not be such a bad thing. And then at the end, I want to give you a kind of framework that I use to decide whether to work on a project for free or not. I want to talk about one thing that is important to kind of frame this conversation in, which is privilege. I've been able to work on projects unpaid or for free because I come from a background and have a support system around me that allows me to take those risks. And that is absolutely not the case for everyone, nor should it be normalized that you have to do that in order to succeed in this industry. It's an extremely important ethical and kind of industry conversation to be having, but I want to put the ethics aside for one now and just have made that point and recognize that point kind of more broadly. And now we can kind of focus in on 4 examples of where you might, if you are able, consider working on unpaid projects. And for each of those 4 situations, I want to touch on the pros and cons in terms of your career, your personal development, and the industry as a whole. The first example of when you might consider working for free is on passion projects. And that could be anything from spec commercials to short films. Whatever it is, it's just a project that you absolutely love and want to make happen. In terms of the positives of doing passion projects, for your career, it can sometimes change it completely in an extremely positive direction. You might not have been given the opportunity yet to work on the projects that you really want to work on and to show people what you can do. And doing a passion project off your own back can really demonstrate to people your vision and where you want to go with your career. A fantastic example of that is an unbelievable filmmaker called, and I'm going to get this pronunciation wrong, Solomon Lichtel. Anyway, he did a project, I don't know how many years ago now, but it was like a spec music video in a style that he really wanted to do. And his career just completely took off from that moment onwards in a way that he admits that it just wouldn't have had he not done that passion project. In terms of kind of personal pros that passion projects can bring, they're probably some of the most creatively satisfying projects that you will ever work on because there's no client or someone else above you forcing your creative hand. The vision can be exactly what you want it to be. And that can be extremely cathartic. It can be just a genuinely lovely experience to be working on something that you're incredibly passionate about, especially if you are maybe in a bit of a creative rut or are not doing projects that fulfill you in that way. Just having an outlet and kind of remembering why you started filmmaking in the first place can just shift your mind back into a much more positive place and have a really good impact kind of on the rest of the work that you're making. But onto the cons, which are that in terms of your career progression, doing a passion project is fantastic if it, goes the way you want it and ends up being the way you want it. But if no one sees it, then it won't really move the needle as much as you were hoping it to. And I've definitely fallen victim to that, where I haven't publicized a certain passion project and I went in with the hope that, certain producers or production companies would see it. But because I didn't push it hard enough and publicize it as much as I should have done, it didn't really go on to do anything and people didn't see it. Then the big con on the kind of personal side is, although passion projects allow complete creative freedom, sometimes that can actually be a bad thing. Too many choices and completely unrestricted creativity can sometimes lead to projects that aren't actually as good as you thought they were going to be or that you had in your head. The best projects and best ideas do actually come from having some boundaries and limitations. So a key takeaway from that is, even when I'm working on passion projects, I will try and give myself some form of restriction just to give myself kind of guardrails in my creative thinking. So for example, I've worked on short films where the parameters were it had to be one actor in one room. That forced some really creative thinking and how to utilize that one room, how to create a compelling story of one actor in one room, so on and so forth. So having no restrictions at all, actually it can get out of control very quickly and you're possibly not equipped to handle the kind of scale that ends up going to. The next scenario where you might consider doing work for free is doing spec work for specific brands or clients. I personally know several kind of agency owners who use this tactic to get a foot in the door with potential new clients. They'll approach them and they'll offer them to do a shoot and a couple of reels completely free of charge to show them what they can do to start building a relationship, all those things. And it absolutely is a great business strategy in that sense, but it does have some downsides that we'll talk about. On the positives, though, it does exactly what I just said, which is it's one of the best ways to get a foot in the door with a new client that you really want to work with. There aren't many clients who would turn down free work. And if you can give them all of that value up front and show them exactly what you can do, then they're much more likely to hire you for a job after that. You can also start to build a relationship with them in a much more organic kind of personal way because you don't have quite yet the relationship of client and filmmaker. So you can be a little bit more loose and friendly with them and you can really get to know them more personally without it being a little bit awkward and bringing business into it, which is a much nicer foundation starting a relationship with a client in that way than if you're kind of business all up front. So it allows you to kind of foster that relationship with them before diving into kind of paid projects. However, the flip side of all of that is that conversely, you could set the tone of your relationship, both personal and work, being that way from then on. They might see you from now on as the kind of cheap or free option because you work for free. They could not see you as professional. It could be harder to start putting boundaries and restrictions on your relationship later on. So I think if you are going to go and take this approach, I would always recommend having a very, very clear upfront conversation about why you are doing this project for them for free upfront, and that is not the expectation after this, and just setting that parameter and expectation of going forward after this project, this is what it will be, just so they understand the entirety of the relationship you hope to build with them and what it will hopefully translate into for both of you. But the last kind of broader problem I potentially have with doing unpaid work as spec work for specific brands and companies is that it creates an industry-wide expectation of unpaid work. Brands and companies might start expecting more junior people to work for free or production companies to do a project for free because they've had a production company or a videographer or someone do that in the past for them. And if that starts going around and that expectation starts being set that this is normal, that everyone should do a project for free, not only is that a problem in the short term for people trying to do paid work, but I know that some companies might start to cycle production companies and freelancers with that intention, always trying to get a freebie at first go and then moving on to a new one. So it's not good in that sense in terms of setting an industry-wide client expectation that at first everyone should always work for free. The third instance you might consider working for free or unpaid is to get experience on someone else's set in a more junior role. So you might come on as a runner or a camera trainee. This is great in terms of the fact that you can gain experience that you probably wouldn't have got any other way. You can network. You can learn from people much more experienced than you are and pick up on things. It can boost your confidence to have that kind of on-set experience. You can also test out multiple roles. Maybe you're not sure of where exactly you want to end up in filmmaking. So you can try working in different departments and kind of gaining experience around those different departments, seeing what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. I personally think working on sets to gain experience is a good thing if you are able to do it. I think it's a fantastic way of networking, a fantastic way of learning. I think you'll learn more being on other people's sets than you would have done in film school, for example. I did. I learned way more on some of my earlier sets than I think I ever would have learned having gone to film school. So I think it's a brilliant thing for that. I think it's a brilliant thing for gaining experience in all the different departments. And I think it's a brilliant thing in terms of really boosting your confidence levels because you're around so many people much more capable than you. However, you need to make sure you are on good sets with good people because there is a danger you could be learning from the wrong kinds of people and picking up the wrong kinds of habits and learning the wrong kind of culture that surrounds it. So again, just be mindful of who you're talking to, what sets you're going on, do your due diligence if you can, ask around if this is a reputable company, and also be mindful of the fact that every set and every production is different. Everyone runs things differently. Just because you have a bad experience somewhere doesn't mean it will always be that way, and vice versa. You might have a fantastic experience, but then you might have a really bad experience. which is a good thing. Again, learning from a plethora of different sets and different people is a fantastic thing if you are able to do it. Obviously, as an industry, the two major things we want to avoid are people being exploited and people not being able to get on their career ladders because they are unable to take on unpaid work. So as an industry, we need to try and fix those two problems. But in terms of the individual, which is who I'm hopefully talking to now, is you individuals, maybe early on in your film careers, is to just be mindful of being exploited. However, this is probably one of the most contentious ones in terms of where the line of exploitation comes and whether productions and production companies should be advertising for any unpaid positions in productions, or whether people should be doing those roles unpaid in the first place, as it takes the spot of someone who is not able to do those roles unpaid in the first place. The final type of project you might consider working for free or unpaid is for charity projects. Now, from a career perspective, charity projects can be some of the most meaningful and personal work that you do if they align strongly with your values, and you can get a true sense of purpose from your work by doing them, because it's one of the few times where you can use your skill set as a filmmaker to have real world impact. And I've found that extremely motivating in the past. And having that impact can also show from an industry perspective the power that films can have, which again just enhances the overall industry and the importance of filmmaking. However, there is definitely a large group of people who would say that charities also get funding or should be trying to get funding. And if they're going to get skilled professionals to work on their projects, they should be able to pay them properly as they are still doing skilled work. Not only that, but these projects can often be quite emotionally draining, as you feel a large moral obligation to give it your all and to put your entire self into these projects and work on them as hard as you can, because they are for such a good cause, even through potential poor mismanagement or no budgets or anything like that. And that can really drain you and burn you out at a certain point. So across my career, I've probably done at least one of all the four things that we've just talked about. And so I've come up with a bit of framework that I use to think about whether or not to do an unpaid project. And that's based on these three questions that I always ask myself. Number one, will this project build towards my career goals? Is it a project that I'm going to want to put on my portfolio that I'm very proud of, that really showcases where I want to go with my career and the kind of projects I want to be working on? Am I going to meet important collaborators and network with them? Is it going to give me exposure in terms of the work that I want to be doing and with the companies or places that I want to be heading towards? The second question is, does it give me personal or creative growth? So will I enjoy it? Will I learn something for it? Is it something that is going to push me as a filmmaker? Is it something that is going to help me grow just as a person in general? And lastly, does it respect the industry? Am I undercutting someone? Am I being taken advantage of? And ultimately, is this something that is hopefully contributing positively to the industry as a whole? And if the answer is yes to at least two of those, then normally I say go for it, and it's probably a good thing to do. But again, I caveat all of this with if you can do it. And I understand completely that not everyone can, nor should we be in an industry where it is the norm that that should be the case in order to progress or get certain places within the industry.